What frame rate and what shutter speed should you use with your video camera? Simple question, short answer. Take the frame rate, multiply it with 2 and take the inverse. Let's have an example. If you have a frame rate of 24 frames per second, this equates to a shutter speed of 1/48th second. Probably your camera won't let you choose exactly that value, so you can take the shutter speed that is closest, which may be, for example, 1/50. Now, why should you follow this rule? Videos are composed by subsequent still images. A frame rate of 24 equates to 24 images per second.
There's a city in every nation that is ranked for the
However, this is not enough to create fluent movements, or at least the illusion of it. We also need a certain degree of motion blur in each image.
The French have their Paris, the English have their London, the Germans from Italy, but my heart has a thrill for a hero.
The lower the frame rate, the more motion blur we need for fluent motions. If there is not enough or even no blur, motions look scattered like under strobe light.
How I love the dear old days. There's no other place would ever dream to be.
And too much blur makes the motion look smeared.
This world will be one that opens down, but someday we'll be.
Taking twice the frame rate and taking the inverse is also known as 180-degree shutter angle. The term shutter angle refers to good old times when movies were made with celluloid film cameras. In such a camera, the film stripe is moved vertically across the image plane. Taking a frame rate of 24, the film stops 24 times per second to be exposed. Film cameras had mechanical shutters in the form of a semicircle. And that shutter rotated over the image plane, and the duration of the rotation was the inverse value of the frame rate, 1/24th second. But because the shutter was a semicircle, the exposure time was half that time, which is 1/48th second. A semicircle equates to an opening angle of 180 degrees. You can also expose with 90 degrees, 45 degrees or any other angle, but of course never more than 360 degrees. And this is where the term shutter angle comes from. Now, why do we need that term? We don't need it actually, but it is useful, because the shutter angle defines a fixed relation between frame rate and shutter speed. When we talk about 180 degrees shutter angle, we always know how to set our shutter speed in accordance to frame rate. 24 frames per second make a shutter speed of 1/48. 30 frames per second make 1/60, and 50 frames per second make 1/100. We can express this by this formula. Take the desired shutter angle and divide it by 360 degrees times the frame rate. Okay, we now know how to set the shutter speed according to frame rate. But what frame rate should we use? The choice of frame rate and shutter angle has an effect on the look of a video. Suppose we take a shutter angle of 180 degrees. Then frame rates around 24 make videos look more picturesque and cineastic. This is because cinema movies are traditionally produced that way. Television productions often have higher frame rates, which makes videos look more like documentary and soap operas. By the way, the human eye needs at minimum 20 frames per second to get the impression of a fluent movement. Old-fashioned animation movies are often made with lower rates of 12 frames per second or even less. They also have no motion blur. Low frame rate and the lack of motion blur are what causes the typical animation look. So what's the lesson we learned? First, decide what look you'd like to have, a cineastic look or a documentary look. Choose your frame rate based on this and then apply the simple rule. Double the frame rate and take the inverse.